So, this is something that I spoke in my book, that I spoke to in my book. It feels to me like there's a state of flux for parenting. It's really changing in so many ways around the world. And perhaps that's my Australian perspective. And you guys are from the States, you're from the opposite corner of the earth. I'd be really interested to hear your perspectives, Barbara and Lisa. How do you see parenting evolving and changing in this moment in history? What changes do you see coming?
Well, we've been at this for almost 20 years, and when we first started as young moms, people were barely talking about attachment parenting, didn't know what it was. They barely talked about breastfeeding, and if they did breastfeed, it was maybe 3 months. If they breastfed 6 months, then they were doing really, really well. We were striving toward 1 year of breastfeeding, and so in the 20 years, now most everybody's heard of attachment parenting thanks to the media. And breastfeeding, now we're talking not only 1 year, we're talking 2 years, 3 years, and getting the support of the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics. So it's a huge shift. And, for the media to proclaim that attachment parenting is mainstream it was huge for us. So we're excited about that.
Yeah. So do you feel that there's an increasing cultural acceptance of breastfeeding?
Absolutely.
What about breastfeeding in public? Do you have instances of how that works in the States?
Well, it's still, it can be controversial in some areas. In others, it's way more accepted. It's such a huge country. But we still hear of little pockets where it's a mother's asked to leave a restaurant or a place of business. And
legally, is that permissible?
Well,
in some states,
there's not really any protection. So the state legislature has to pass some law to protect mothers and babies. It's unfortunate. But the good thing is that when this happens, it rallies all these mothers, and they come to the aid of this mother, and there's protests, and you see the empowerment of young parents now to really try to change the paradigm.
Right. I mean, that says to me that more and more people are starting to really get that they have a right to protest, and that is called injustice, really.
Right.
It's not, well, I'm sorry for, taking up your space with my baby. It's called injustice. And that's interesting. That feels new, doesn't it? It feels like a new story for our two countries.
It does. And I was just thinking about when we first started Attachment Parenting International, and we first put our website up, we were hearing, from individual moms and some dads from around the world saying, thank you, we thought we were the only one. We felt so alone, we felt criticized and marginalized. And now it's like these, I'm not saying this just because of our organization, but I'm sure it contributed along with the organizations like La Leche League in, empowering these parents and saying, this is the right way to, well, I shouldn't say the right way, but this is the optimal way to raise children. And along those lines, I would say that we are not espousing a recipe or a formula. It's more about an attitude. It's more about, this understanding of the need of responsiveness, this warm, sensitive care that children need. And how parents implement that is up to them, but just having that understanding of warm, sensitive care being important for the optimal development of children.
Yeah, I was interested when you said a moment earlier something about the isolation of parents. And so then I'm curious about this. How often do you guys have a parent say to you, I'm trying to be more responsive to my baby? Say parents with babies. I'm trying to bring in a kind of parenting style that is more intimately responsive to my baby's needs than what I'm used to from the last generation. But I don't have people in my life that I can share this with. I feel alone, or perhaps more than just alone, I feel judged. My world judges me. Do you hear that story a lot?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a huge cultural overlay, especially in the United States, that, we want children to be independent. And so we believe that independence is instilled when they're just weeks old. So you have to ignore their needs, you have to detach, because otherwise they'll become too dependent on you. And all the child development studies, all the brain research is all saying it's the opposite is true. To create independence means your dependent needs are met. So that's a lot to overcome in our culture, the culture of behaviorism, of reinforcing a negative behavior, and we see crying sometimes as a negative behavior, not a need of a baby to be attended to be rocked, to be held, to be fed. So there's so much confusion. Lisa and I felt it too as young mothers. We were coming from universities that were teaching behaviorism, and it wasn't until we attended support groups and we were around other wise women and fathers. And that's the other thing I wanted to say, is it's exciting to see so many fathers more involved with their babies and learning how to massage their babies, or
ditto,
holding them in soft carriers and giving them the touch and holding that perhaps they never received. So it touches that chord in them, like you were saying, that maybe I wasn't rocked and held this way, and maybe it'll help me get in touch with that if I'm a little more nurturing parent myself. And
a lot of fathers turning up to the birth of their child in one way or another.
Yes.
That's quite new in this kind of, in these numbers. I heard somebody say up to 90%. I mean, I'm sure that varies. But I noticed that when dads are present at the birth, even though they might be quite overawed by the experience, as long as there's enough support for the dad, for what he's going through, that they are moved by that moment so profoundly that it sets a new chord or a new temperature for how they are then responsive to their child's need from that moment forward. Do you find that?
Right. I think it creates a sense of awe, and beauty that stimulates the oxytocin that we know is the hormone of love, and we know men can create oxytocin in their bodies as well. So to have that special moment, to be there, to witness it, it's a miracle. Birth is a miracle, and so it's
like a love potion.
Yeah.
People fall in love at the moment of birth. That's one of the things that does happen.
And even for those dads that may think that, I don't know if I can handle it, it just, it may be too overpowering for me, then they actually go through it, and then they realize, wow, they feel empowered themselves, that they were able to be there for their wife, and it wasn't as bad as they had built it up in their minds to be.
I was speechless, actually, at the birth of my daughter. I was frightened, I was anxious, I was completely overawed by the whole experience. And really, I haven't had a precedent, I haven't had prior experience of a birth not being a terrifying thing in terms of all of the imagery of birth that I've seen in the media my entire life. I wasn't kind of, conditioned to be expecting something that's natural, normal, and beautiful. I was conditioned to be on guard for something ominous and terrible. So no wonder I was frightened. But it was a healing experience to see how well everything goes.
And for many, it can be a spiritual experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Transformative experience.
That's one reason we encourage families to, couples to attend in-depth childbirth classes. Don't just go to one or two classes at the hospital. When you're really informed about birth by a trained childbirth educator, it does alleviate so much of that fear, and gives you an expectation of, this usually runs really well if it's, if a mother's given the support that she needs, and leave her to be empowered for a wonderful birth.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's nothing that is a substitute for the supportive power of direct presence, to be together in the flesh and talking about birth and learning from educators that the internet or a book cannot give us that.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And reframing the words and terminology that we use for birth, like instead of saying pain, we talk about pressure, because when we use words like that, it makes the experience maybe a little more too powerful, for some people.
Fearful.
Fearful.
So you're talking about how a language can condition an expectation, and then potentially there's the self-fulfilling prophecy of what the experience is when you expect it through your language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I find in my work with parents, a lot of parents that are learning new ways of being parents are met with even hostility from their family, from their elders or their neighbours and friends. For whether it's having our baby sleep near us at night instead of putting them alone down the hall, or being responsive and picking up a crying baby, all of which can be, I suppose, breaks from the past. And it's not just the disapproval and the disagreement, it's almost hostility sometimes. So I'm wondering, what is your experience about what it gives parents? I know with all of the parenting communities that you two have built around the world and in the States primarily, what does that give parents? How does that help parents to be able to do what it is in their hearts?
I think our groups create a safety net for parents where they know they can go and get the support they need. They can build that sense of trust and not feel judged, and be able to get ideas from other parents, and that's what we did. We didn't have all the answers, and we don't expect our leaders to have all the answers, but it provides a forum, a way of connecting, supporting, and saying, have you tried this? And then another parent might say, well, we tried this. And so just the simplest of suggestions can make a world of difference, not only maybe in a child's behavior, but the parent-child relationship. And so it really inspires us to know these groups are out there. And what really inspires us are the facilitators that go through the training, and they do this out of their own passion, their own commitment to give back, because they have been so strengthened by the experience.
So it's about the information that is exchanged in the groups, but also the support and how empowering that can be. And I guess when any of us are feeling the safety of having a community of a shared, some shared core values about how we parent, then we blossom. Yeah, we can proceed without looking over our shoulder. Yeah.
And as we've talked about, that alloparenting, that every baby that is born needs at least 4 adults in their lives to help not only support the parents, but to enrich the life of the child. And so it provides that for the children as well.
Yeah. It's no less what the community does for the parents than it is for what the parents do for the child. Yeah.
So if you don't have that in your community, if you don't have extended family, go out and build your tribe. Find like-minded people.
Yeah. Well, I must say that I'm really impressed with. Very glad to have met you guys. I've read about you for long enough.
And we appreciate your work. I mean, you're giving people context and the big picture, and I think that's another reason our groups are thriving, is that they are feeling this pioneer spirit that we're changing the paradigm, and the ripple effect will have profound effect for generations to come.
Yeah. Hooray for the paradigm shift.
Hey.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.